I guess so. Before I start, I'll just share a fun little story. So, yesterday, a big part of this presentation is about volunteering, taking your infosec skill sets, whether you're a student or whether you've been doing this for decades, using some of those things that we've learned, both in the military and whether you're doing cybersecurity in the military or if you started doing it after you got out, trying to kind of, like I always think on the back of the MREs, right? You had like the whole concept of the force multipliers and things like that. And the way that our special skill sets can be used as like a force multiplier for, it's cheesy, but like a better term to, really maximize what you're doing volunteer wise. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because you don't want your volunteering effort to be like so similar to your day job and work that you don't enjoy it. It's just like, oh, I gotta get up and do this thing again, like not getting any, value add to your personal, feeling good type vibes, but at the same time, trying to take advantage of that and using our special skill sets to do special things is pretty awesome. But so I'm also volunteering for the Department of Energy's Cyberforce competition, and I volunteer to be a backup judge, which is great because I'm happy to help with that. And I feel like I overextended myself a little bit. I didn't realize as a backup judge that I would only have like a 10-hour window to create a whole bunch of videos. I thought I had a week. So yesterday, I was trying to prepare for this talk and cramming in all of these video judging things. And like, oh man, I'm the biggest hypocrite in the universe right now. Here I am burning myself out because I made too many obligations when, had I known I was going to be presenting at VetSecCon when I signed up for that, I probably would have told them my availability was a little different. So even the experts, even the people that do this stuff quite a bit, we get burned out too. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen. Actually, no, I'm going to keep sharing my screen and just check that the recording has started. It looks like it says recording will start soon. Yeah, we'll just go with it. Oh, hey, I see Tom says all set here too. Wonderful. So I'll wait another 30 more seconds or so before really kicking off the formal presentation here, and we will go ahead and get started. All right, one sec. Okay, so good morning, everyone. This is Infosec Veteran Social Impact, how you can volunteer your cyber defense skills without getting yourself burned out. So my name is Tom Costello. You can find me online super easily, kd9cpb.com. I always wanted a really cool nickname or, some type of handle online, and I just never found anything I liked. And so I ended up going with what the FCC gave me when I got my ham radio license, which is KD9CPB. And that's actually pretty terrible for privacy reasons, but it's pretty easy to find me. I can assure you I'm the only KD9CPB out there. And so these slides are based off of a talk I originally gave at Blue Team Con 2022. And I'm just so glad to be here at VetSecCon because, I got the shirt, been involved with the Slack channels for quite some time. And we have these superpowers as veterans, especially veterans that have been, a little bit further down the cybersecurity rabbit hole, whether you're just getting started or whether you've been doing cybersecurity for decades. There's some superpowers we have that a lot of people don't, especially if you're trying to help out some of the more senior veteran populations and people that otherwise, might just look the other way when it comes to, personal cyber hygiene, for lack of a better term, not becoming a scam victim and stuff like that. So with that, let me go ahead and start off of, who's this dude and why should he care? So, and the left-hand side, you'll see all the stuff that I did in the military. I was in the Marine Corps Reserve for about a decade, give or take. And then on the civilian side, I've been doing some flavor of network security or network engineering pretty much my whole career, about 15-ish years now. Currently, I'm a senior network engineer at a very large research and education campus here in northeastern Illinois. And before I continue, it's super important that I mention that I'm just here as Tom today. Like, strictly all the views and opinions here are those of my own, not those of anyone I currently work for, or have in the past, or might have future affiliations with. Like, this is just me as Tom, the Marine Corps veteran, like, just personal opinions here. And it's important I mention that because one of the biggest volunteer ones I've ever gotten was working with Congressman Danny Davis's Technology Advisory Committee. You can actually get in touch with your local elected officials and really move the needle on certain things if you so choose to do so. But even though that's like the most, fanciest, prestigious volunteer thing I've ever done, the one I'm most proud of, and I had to work my way up to this. I didn't just, get lucky and started this way, was being the substitute bingo caller of my local American Legion post 854 over in Evergreen Park, Illinois. And unfortunately, the pandemic has not been kind to the post. We still haven't started bingo back up, but you would be surprised that even the least technical volunteering opportunities, such as being that bingo caller, opportunities present themselves as an Infosec veteran to really move the needle in social impact. And so before we talk more about social impact, I should probably talk about what it actually is. And there isn't like a single one size fits all definition. But the top Google result says, and I'm just going to say it real fast because I think it needs to be said, any significant or positive changes that solve or at least address social injustice and challenges. So that's kind of a mouthful, but whenever I think of social impact, I think it's just far more than volunteering, regardless of what definition you go with. And we're going to focus on social impact ideas that really pertain to our skill sets as veterans and as people either breaking into or currently in the InfoSec community. And the main reason I kind of got this topic going was kind of a happy accident. So my wife is a head of social impact, and now she's head of community relations and that type of thing. And so at the start of the pandemic, we became office mates, and we talk about what we do at work. But prior to actually being in the same lofted ceiling condo where we had no privacy and we could all hear each other's work calls, I didn't really know like the extent of what she was doing in social impact. And hearing some of the conversations she was having, I thought, wow, that's actually like super good stuff. Maybe I should be doing more of this when it comes to the cybersecurity and community outreach side of the house. So figured that kind of unique experience makes this a little more insightful than you might expect from a network engineer otherwise. So I kept this slide in. This is one of my favorite things to mention. I played way too much video games in high school, particularly Halo, Halo 2. I think Halo 3 came out like my senior year. And so the choose difficulty screen just kind of spoke to me when it comes to, I know this is like the last slide you expect in a social impact presentation, but the way that when you're in easy mode, your foes cower and fall before you, and final victory will leave you wanting more. And I feel like that's the biggest problem we have when it comes to some of the easier volunteering opportunities out there. It's good, it's great, you'll feel a little bit good, but final victory is going to leave you wanting more. But that being said, we're all at different stages of our professional and personal lives. And sometimes you might have an envelope of time where you can do some really medium and big wins of volunteering and social impact. But other times in our lives, it's better to just focus on some of the easy stuff. Right now, I have a kid that's still in diapers, and until we don't have a kid in diapers in this household, I'm probably just going to do more of the easy and medium-sized stuff. And then hopefully, as our family gets older, I'll probably get back into the bigger things again. But just keep that in mind. Everyone's in a different season of their life. Sometimes it makes sense to do the easy stuff. Sometimes it doesn't. So we'll get started with some of the easy stuff. So first and foremost, I think we all kind of take for granted the ability we have to get the youth, and when I mean by youth, I'm like talking, grades 6 through 12 or so, people that are just getting started, don't really know what they want to do in life, just having positive interactions that involve, hey, have you thought about cybersecurity as something you want to do? And one thing that I've kind of learned, and this is just my personal experience, maybe it's similar for others, I have a little cousin, he's not little anymore, he's like 21, but back when he was in middle school and high school, I would text him saying, hey, have you thought about I know you're in front of computers and video games a lot. Do you want to do something technology related? I'm happy to talk about it anytime. And I would typically get either no response or kind of okay, sure, text 48 business hours later. But if I were to text him about, hey man, have you heard, with this whole Minecraft hack and this Log4j thing, this is just so crazy and cool how some Minecraft people are now really changing the landscape of some big cybersecurity things. And if I ask about Minecraft or ask, hey, what are you doing on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 nowadays, I would instantaneously, within 5 minutes, get a super meaningful text back and have some cool conversations. So just think about how you can kind of squeak some of that stuff in there, especially if, as a veteran, I would imagine that you probably have some cousins or distant family or family friends that have been looking up to you oh, Joe joined the Air Force, he's doing pretty good, all of this stuff. And some of those younger people, things that you say to them, especially when it comes to, hey, have you thought about cybersecurity? They're going to listen, maybe even more so than they would to their own parents sometimes. You never know. So aside from that, another really cool thing you can do, I've been calling this random acts of InfoSec kindness. And this tweet from Melissa is a perfect example. So she was in an Uber, and the driver was asking about Security Plus. And now we're all not Alyssa's. Like, she's got this really good technology careers book, and that's fantastic. But even as just a regular, just getting started InfoSec person, one thing that you can do is, if let's say this conversation happens, and let's say the Uber driver is actually having a tough time, maybe they just wasted, whatever, $250 or it is nowadays to take the Security Plus and failed. Well, if they're not feeling so hot, they might think, oh, I'm just never going to do this. I'm just going to drive for Uber forever, and this isn't for me. But if you have a positive interaction with that kind of person, like, oh yeah, you know what, I can do Security Plus. I'm going to get back to the books and do this. And then they get the Security Plus, and then they get their CISSP 5-10 years later. And then before you know it, you might be working for that person. It's just crazy what those little interactions can do for someone's career development. So be mindful of that. Purchasing, oh my gosh. So again, within the ethical guidelines of the organization that you're working for, keep in mind that there's all types of, service-connected, disabled veteran small businesses that you're able to buy things from instead of maybe going straight to CDW or Amazon or things like that. Not to throw those big companies under the bus, they're great. I buy quite a bit of stuff from those. But just think about, even if the price is a little bit higher, going with a veteran-owned business for procuring some of the IT or InfoSec stuff that you're buying, that might move the needle in your community. Typically, those type of organizations are pretty good about hiring veterans too. So again, keep that in mind. Hustle on LinkedIn. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to dive into this one too deep, but here in Chicagoland, and I spelled it wrong. Oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing. But it's called rollcallchicagoland.org. It's this joint effort. The USO is involved, our Marine for Life representatives involved, and they have these amazing networking events where, and I've been to some of these where you attend, you don't really know who's going to be there. But there was one time where I was just hanging out and then started talking to another Marine friend. And then before I know it, I'm talking with someone that's like pretty high up the food chain at JP Morgan, financial governance, risk, and compliance type person that was asking me, questions about cybersecurity. Hey, do you know anyone that's like thinking about this? Like, I need this skill set. And those conversations go a very long way. So just keep that in mind. Again, I'm very lucky here in Chicago that we have Roll Call Chicagoland. You might have something similar in your locale. And cash donation. So we all know that cash rules everything around us, but this is pretty much the easiest. Hey, I'm just going to throw $100 at the USO or whatever it is. Just I want to help, but I don't really have any time or effort to do that. And there's ways that you can take those cash donations and kind of multiply them a lot, especially if you want to get more involved with volunteering. And we'll talk about that pretty soon. Okay, so with all of these easy InfoSec Veteran Social Impact things that you can be doing, there's also some issues. And this first one is actually related to the cash donation. So there's this pretty cool, I would even call it a hack in Cisco Network Academy. And if you haven't heard of Cisco Network Academy, it's mostly courses to teach the basics of cybersecurity, network engineering, the stuff that you would need to get a halfway decent IT support job. Very popular at community college, a lot of community organizations. And so there's the search tool where you can actually search by zip code the Cisco Network Academy affiliated institutions in your local zip code. And if I were to search my zip code, which is 60463, you would see the local community college that I went to. They have an amazing Cisco Network Academy program. I started Cisco Network Academy in the Marines and finished up there and had a really good time. They're doing great. They're just fine. I'll probably help them someday, but I'm not worried about that program. What I am worried about is if I put in my parents' zip code, so 60652, you'll see on the southwest side of Chicago, there's a whole bunch of organizations, some faith-based, some like community centers and things like that, that have Cisco Network Academy programs, but they might not have any budget at all, or any mentors at all, or anyone that knows anything about cybersecurity and network engineering to help people that are trying to better themselves and get into our career path and that sort of thing. So by using that tool, you can search for those, and you might be able to make a cash donation of, let's say, $100 through PayPal or whatever type of online giving thing they have. And in the comments field, you can put in there, hey, I'm Tom. I'm actually a Marine Corps veteran network engineer. I like what you're doing. I like that you're trying to help out underserved areas. Like, maybe, is there anything I can do to help out? Just let me know. And I've done that multiple times, and it's fizzled out every single time. I'm kind of sad. I was really hoping at least one or two of them would have, gotten back to me, and we could have really meaningful volunteer opportunity where I can volunteer my network security skills to make the community a better place. But it wasn't meant to be. But if you do that and you have success, please let me know. I think someday I'm hoping to have a success story in that department. Of course, taking care of yourself. Again, this entire presentation isn't just about trying to do all of these cool social impact things. It's also about taking care of yourself. And there's been times where I feel like there's this learning treadmill where it's like, at work, I'm expected to do my job and keep up to date with what's going on. And then we don't really recommend or really need tech certifications. I just like having them anyways. And there's only so many hours in the day. Like, I really want to get my CISSP, but at the same time, there's all these other things going on, and trying to balance career development with your regular ticket queue if you're working, or your regular homework if you're a student. It's pretty hard. I got a bunch of thoughts on that on my blog if you're curious. Time affluence. So if you haven't heard of this one before, definitely take a look at this Coursera course, The Science of Wellbeing. At the start of the pandemic, I think I saw like a newspaper article about this. They call it the happiness class. And one of the things, it's free online course, and one of the things that kind of really spoke to me was this concept of time affluence. So in previous jobs, I was working just tons and tons of hours, and even if I was successful in doing things good, doing things well, there was only so many hours in the day, and I didn't have a lot of free time for hobbies and things, or volunteering for that matter. And if you have time affluence, maybe even if you're at like I hate to say this, but like a more dead end, like help desk job, or really no room for advancement, but you're only there for 35 to 40 hours a week, or if you're working the overnight shift on a SOC and you have some free time, just be mindful that you have time affluence. You can actually do stuff. Like, it can really change your opinion on what's going on in your life. Not having to work 60 plus unpaid hours, or getting pulled for working parties like when we were all in the service, right? So some pretty good stuff there. Of course, the VetSec Awesome Infosec page on GitHub. So this is something that I've actually screwed up in the past. So when I was getting my Security Plus, the way I did it was mostly through the Chicago Public Library's bookshelves. As this picture, that's not even like a mile away from where Blue Team Con was in downtown Chicago. And as you can see, there's no shortage of security books, a lot of good stuff there. The problem is, when I was doing that in circa 2007, the books are relatively new, things were still coming out. Sadly, a lot of the books from the mid 2000s are still on that shelf here in 2023. So some of the advice that I used to give people of, yeah, go to Chicago Public Library. They got every book that you'd ever want. It's good. Well, it's still good. It's just it hasn't really been updated. Whereas that VetSec GitHub page, that's getting updated all the time. There's so many more computer-based trainings out there that are free or very little cost that didn't exist when I was getting my initial Security Plus and that sort of thing. So just keep in mind, if there was something that worked really well when you were getting started at your career, maybe there's a better fit out there nowadays, and I feel like that Awesome Infosec page is a great example. Okay, and so I know I'm probably a little bit over on time already, so I'm going to go through this slide pretty fast. But if you want to get some medium wins, so you're talking about a little bit more time that you're spending to volunteer, but you get a little bit more back. You're going to feel, like you've really moved the needle in social impact doing some of this stuff. Mentoring via an established program. I really like 1 Million Degrees. They help out community college students. They're very big here in Chicago. I'm not too sure how they are nationwide, but just keep them in mind if you want to do any type of mentoring. Way better than trying to do it on your own. any flavor of STEM talk, or at previous employers have even done these merit badge clinics with like digital technology, where you can have all different types of scout troops from all across the city of Chicago for us that were able to come in and learn about digital technology, basic cyber hygiene, some really cool stuff you could be doing there if you're at somewhere that does that sort of thing. And actually getting involved with an organization like Gear Up or Genesis Works. Here in Chicago, we have CARA. And these are organizations that take people that mostly coming from underserved areas, places that might not have access to InfoSec careers, no one really knows about them, and training people to get some of these jobs, especially when you're just getting started. As a veteran, especially if you're a little bit, I don't want this to sound mean, but if you're on the younger side and you just did your initial 4 years of active duty service, or if you're actively in the reserves right now, right after high school, you might actually be a fantastic candidate for some of these programs, such as Europe or Genesis Works, especially if your career in the military wasn't really cybersecurity. So whether it's helping or actually taking advantage of their services, there's organizations out there that will help, and they already exist. It's really good stuff, so keep that in mind. Senior citizens, and I mentioned this a little bit before the start of the talk, but we have this superpower as InfoSec veterans, especially those of us in the post 9/11 bucket, where you can just go to an American Legion, VFW, DAV, all these different veteran service organizations, and just chat, and you'd be shocked at the amount, I should say, the lack of cybersecurity, hygiene, and knowledge that some of the senior veterans have. And it makes me really sad too, because when you think about it, some of these senior veterans, they're getting their Social Security check, they're getting their VA money, all of that type of stuff, and they get scammed like all the time. And oftentimes those scammers are outside the United States. So to a certain extent, I almost feel like it's part of our national service and part of something that we can do as veterans to make this entire country a better place, to make sure that they are not scam victims. And I think about when I was a substitute bingo caller, if I was selling my bingo bonanza tickets before it all, and I hear the wife of a Vietnam veteran say, "Oh, hey Tom, I know you're big into computers. I just got the nicest call from the nicest guy. He said he's from Microsoft and he remoted into my computer. It was free. All I had to do was give him my Social Security number, and everything's faster now." That's a good moment to not sell the bingo bonanza ticket, and maybe call that person's son or daughter and start getting a credit freeze, and make sure that cyber hygiene is being practiced at home, because that could potentially be the difference between that senior veteran or senior veteran spouse having a good time at bingo, able to pay for groceries and medications and stuff, to having to choose between if they want to pay for groceries or medications because they got scammed. Again, we got that superpower as InfoSec veterans. You're going to get listened to at some of those veteran service organizations much, much, much more seriously than someone that isn't a veteran is. So again, just keep that in mind, especially if you have one of those type of posts in your community that maybe you haven't stepped foot into in quite some time. I actually haven't stepped foot into mine in a while either. So I'm a bit of a hypocrite on that today. Now, medium mistakes. So as you get further down the medium and hard difficulties, you can find yourself in some bigger problem spots. I would recommend don't solely sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? Depend on your employer for these medium social impact opportunities. It's not like the military where you can pretty much take it to the bank that no one's going to get laid off or fired because of bad financial times. When you're a civilian, that changes. And I found myself in one of those awkward scenarios where we're doing these merit badge clinics, everything's great, and then there's around the layoffs, all the budget money for that type of thing dried up, and now you're getting a call from the scout saying, "Hey, when are we doing this again?" And you have to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm actually doing the work of 2 of my coworkers because of the layoffs, and I don't know when it's going to happen." And just a really awkward space to be in. So just be mindful of that. Knowing when and how to say no. I've struggled with this because saying no in the military is super easy, right? Like that's usually a no-brainer, especially once you get some rank. But once you start doing that professionally in the civilian side, it can be challenging. And there's this book called Your Perfect Right that's helped me with that. If that sounds like something that's up your alley, then take a look. If not, that's cool too. Also using employer assistance programs, and there's zero shame for asking them help too. A lot of these employee assistance programs, they're free. They can get you in touch with someone if you're having issues where, oh my gosh, I'm just burning out all the time because my childcare situation's bad, or I just want to talk about, I got myself into this huge mess with a home remodeling contractor and I don't know what to do and it's just like eating me up, like that type of stuff, especially if you're trying to volunteer on top of that, it's going to burn you out. So just consider giving those resources a try if any of that speaks to you. And whatever you do, just don't say yes to becoming the unpaid help desk for your American Legion or VFW, etc. I've actually been pretty good, especially when I was volunteering for bingo, where people would ask like, "Hey Tom, we can just call you if we can't figure out how the bingo machine is talking with this Android tablet setup that they had." I'm like, if I am here, if I am present, yes, I'm happy to help. Do not call me or rope me into any of this stuff outside of the bingo hours, because that's the only envelope of time I have to give. And that was well received. And sometimes setting those boundaries is necessary when you're doing that type of thing. Okay, so we're finally getting to the winning big phase of the presentation here. And when I say winning big, again, the kind of it's like more money, more problems, right? Like the bigger that you're going, the bigger time commitments and potential trouble you can find yourself in. But what I would recommend is, never fly solo on any of the stuff we're talking here. You really want to partner with an existing nonprofit or government official, etc. You just can't do everything yourself. You're going to need a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for, resources behind the big efforts to really get them off the ground. And we talked about this a little bit, so the Cisco Neticat, the trial donations that talked about in the easy stuff, actually going there and really building up a real mentoring program, getting people really involved in learning the tools of the trade for network security, maybe looping in some other veterans, both ones taking the classes and those mentoring. Oh my gosh, there's so many big wins you could potentially do there. Volunteering for the cyber defense competitions, and I'm hoping to leave some time for Q&A. And if there's one takeaway that you get from this entire presentation, I hope it's that these cybersecurity competitions are just the best thing ever for us veterans. There's actually a lot of similarities with them. And when I remember, the ComExes that we used to do on reserve weekends, where it's like, you can just nonstop do this exercise for, working crazy hours, trying to get it done, but you learn so much during those exercises. And those competitions are the same way. Now, if you're just getting started, being a participant in those competitions, great way to grow your career. Again, I'm here today as Tom, but I do work for the Department of Energy, and they have this the DOE lab, I should say. And the DOE labs have the Cyber Force competition, which is amazing for veterans. Oh my gosh, you have to be, I believe, a full-time student at a U.S. institution, but just the amount of career opportunity and the type of things that you'll learn from those competitions, that's going to set you apart on a resume. That might be the difference between getting that tier 1 SOC position or being stuck on the help desk. It's just crazy powerful what those cybersecurity competitions can do for your career. And then once your career is a little bit more established, then you can start volunteering. Again, I was just helping judge some of the DOE Cyberforce stuff. I really want to get back involved with CCDC again. I did that as a student, and I want to volunteer again. But just keep in mind, there's some big ones, especially as a veteran, that you can do with those security competitions. And here's my favorite one: writing your local elected officials. So remember, I know this has been something that I've done on some really stressful reserve weekends where we're out in the middle of nowhere, it's freezing, we're in tents, and you're just hating life the whole time, and someone jokes around about I'm gonna write my congressman about this, and you're just joking, and it's like, oh, funny, haha. But as a veteran, if you write your local officials, you'd be surprised at how much they listen. And now you're not going to get a letter back from your senator or congressperson or anything like that, but you might get put on a mailing list, or you might get maybe kind of a boilerplate memo of like, hey, thanks for your concern, we're going to have this town hall coming up, consider stopping by. And that's exactly what happened to me. So I wrote all my elected officials saying, hey, what are we doing about cybersecurity? You hear about these ransomware things all the time. I sure hope that's not going to be a thing for the state of Illinois or the city of Chicago or the county of Cook or any of those organizations, right? And so I got a couple replies back, and Congressman Danny Davis sent me exactly what I've just mentioned of, hey, we're doing this town hall. I went to the town hall. I really liked it. I wrote him another letter saying, hey, thanks for the town hall. It was a good time. If you ever want to talk cybersecurity, I'd love to be more involved. Now, that got me a phone call with one of the congressional staffers. And then before I knew it, I was on his technology advisory committee. And there's this Computer and Internet Equity Act, and it's kind of fizzled out. I don't think this is ever going to proceed in legislature, but they have this act to try to get underserved areas more resources to, learn computers and get internet, things like that. And the first revision of that bill, I think, yeah, bill's the proper term here. It was mostly focused on things like coding and computer science type topics. And I made sure to say, like, well, that's fantastic, but what about cybersecurity? Like, you actually don't need to learn how to code for a lot of the cybersecurity gigs out there. Like, we really need to include that. And they did. And so there's parts of that bill that talk about getting resources for cybersecurity training that otherwise would not have been in there. And I just thought it was so cool. And even though that was kind of going to fizzle out, and I know Congress and progress and all of that stuff is a touchy subject, but yeah, it's just knowing that there's opportunities out that like there. As a veteran, just think about that. There's some big ones you might be able to do that others cannot. And now, as I joked here, writing content actually works. No, that's just something we joked about when we were having a rough day in the military, right? Well, I didn't get this idea on my own. It was actually from a DEF CON talk that California Congressman Ted Lieu gave a couple years ago before the world shut down at DEF CON. I saw it in person, and I loved the talk and thought I had to include the link here. By all means, try this at home. And again, don't expect a meaningful answer or anything with your elected officials. Your mileage is going to vary. But even if you don't get a reply, just writing to your elected officials, there's probably some intern or staffer that has, a tally mark of, oh, another person wrote about cybersecurity again. Oh, wow, there's 50 tally marks. Maybe we should actually have the congressperson look into this. Like, just, again, that stuff adds up over time. Okay, so, oops, sorry, my slides got messed up here. But when you go big, you can also expose yourself to big trouble. Again, I would highly recommend don't reinvent the wheel. Don't try to start your own new organization unless you're really, really determined and have a huge envelope of time to pull it off. I actually tried doing that myself. I bought this domain, thepibay.org. I thought was the coolest domain name. I wanted to get Raspberry Pis in the hands of some of the very underserved communities here on the southwest side of Chicago and the southwest suburbs and the west side of the city. But between the Raspberry Pi supply chain crisis and the Omicron variant of COVID and having a kid, it just wasn't meant to be. It just all fizzled out. And I was pretty sad about it because I had some pretty good intentions and wanted to spend some time trying to move the needle doing that type of thing. But what I would recommend is if you find yourself in that situation, I remember just waking up and thinking like, oh, man, this Pi Bay thing's really falling apart. And then I have to remind myself that, you know what, Tom, it's not going to be on the front page of the Chicago Tribune that Tom Costello screwed up the pibay.org, this thing didn't get off the ground. Like, it's not like when you're doing enterprise IT or cybersecurity incident response, or if you don't get a good reply to your boss and the managers and the CIO, it's going to be a bad time. Like, kind of the normal for social impact and nonprofits is that things just kind of fizzle out sometime. Again, there's a very hard, it's hard to get funding, it's hard to get resources. It's just kind of the norm for things to fizzle out. So don't take it personally if things don't go as planned with social impact. There's a really good book I like called Feeling Good by Dr. Burns that talks more about this cognitive distortion of you might be knocking it out of the park at your civilian job. Everything's going great, but you had something go bad with volunteering and you just kind of, it's like the one drop of black ink that clouds an entire gallon of water, and now it's all, distorted and bad. So again, just keep that stuff in mind. It's definitely been something that I know I need to work on sometimes. And lastly, backwards planning the time commitments. Again, if you're going big, it's going to take a big amount of your time. Don't write checks you can't cash with time. Just be mindful of that. Try to backwards plan if you're doing some big volunteering stuff with Infosec veteran topics. Okay, this is perfect. I think we're going to have about 5-10 minutes of Q&A. So my closing thoughts here. when you think about it, any volunteering can use your both veteran and InfoSec skill sets if you get creative enough. Now, don't like walk into your American Legion post and be like, I'm here to do InfoSec volunteering. Like people are going to think, what's this guy all about? But as you start to grow some relationships with some of the veteran service organizations, a great example of this being Disabled American Veterans, Chapter 42 here in Illinois. I started going to some of the meetings, just mostly hanging out with some Marine friends and, talking about VA claims and stuff like that. Turns out that they actually needed a lot more help than I thought with printing out some of the VA paperwork, helping the senior veterans apply for some of the new PACT Act things, and all this paperwork and IT stuff that makes that process simpler. There's actually a lot of things, again, superpowers we have as veterans in InfoSec and technology, that we can go to a place like that DAV chapter and help a bunch of veterans from all types of different backgrounds, ages, etc. So again, you have that superpower, just be mindful of that. And again, if there's only one thing you got out of this, just these cyber defense competitions, they are the bee's knees. If you have an employer that's looking to get more talent or hire more veterans, kind of squeeze it in there like, hey, can we buy a table at the Midwest Regional CCDC? Maybe we can try to get some veterans that are doing this thing recruited to our organization too. Again, huge social impact wins with those cyber defense competitions. Cannot say enough good things. Obviously, I'm a bit biased that I'm a huge fan of DOE Cyberforce, just because my coworkers are doing that exact initiative actually right now as I'm speaking. But whether it's DOE Cyberforce, CCDC, I think the Air Force Auxiliary has, they call it Cyber Patriot, and then there's another one called NCL. Just look into those if you're just getting started. Or if you're a little bit more mature, great places to volunteer your skill set. And lastly, just remember that all it takes is one positive interaction with technology to change someone's life, to think about the cybersecurity career that they otherwise might not have thought about, and just be mindful of that. So with that, you'll see there's all my info on the bottom. Again, pretty easy to find, KD9CPB on Twitter, infosec.exchange if you're into the Mastodon thing. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and I sure hope that there's some good questions in the Q&A thingy thing. So I see here, oh yeah, we got some comments about Network Academy. Yep, a lot of good free training there too. Thanks for bringing that up, because I keep forgetting that you don't need like a full-blown, college affiliation, and for me, it was the Marine Corps Communications Electronics School that first sponsored my NetAcad account. Yeah, you can just go on there, not even having, any type of background in InfoSec, and get some good stuff right off the bat. Okay, we have any more questions here? I know there's this Q&A option. I'm just looking at the chat on the side. And also I will be on the, I personally prefer the VetSec Slack. So if you're on the Slack, feel free to DM me. Again, KD9CPB, I'm super easy to find there. Or I'm also on the Discord. I got that open in a separate tab, but again, Slack's kind of my go-to communicator. So that's the best way to get me. Oh, I see there's a number 2 in the moderator. Okay, cool. The moderators are here. Okay. Any other questions out there? We still got a good 7 minutes or so. Feel free to ask me literally anything. Again, my background's mostly network security. Started off Marine Corps Reserve, and then I did financial services for a while. Now I'm back to working for Uncle Sam, kind of indirectly with the DOE National Lab. So happy if you're curious about any of that, just reach out, and I can talk nonstop to other veterans trying to do similar things any day of the week. I'm hoping for at least one more question or comment or something in the chat, if someone doesn't mind. Can be anything too. It can be, I don't know, we can talk about how bad the Chicago White Sox are doing, etc. Okay. All right, well, I am not seeing anything else in the chat, so I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing my video and audio. I think we got a nice 5-minute break before the next set of presentations, so that should work out quite nicely. Happy VetSecCon to all those that celebrate, and thanks for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Have a good weekend.